The views expressed in this presentation are those of the host and guests and do not represent the views of any lodge, Grand Lodge, appended body, or any other person or persons whomsoever.
He is actually going around the lodge and he gets attacked. So that is a major difference.
Okay. You know what? I'll just jump to the next book. So,
well, if I just summarize about the question of immortality, so immortality is such an important subject in Masonry that people gloss it over, and I believe this is exactly what the early Masons were trying to study, because there's no reference to immortality in the Bible. They don't talk about it at the time. In the common press, people were writing books about immortality, whether the soul died or does it survive? Does the soul die when you die and then the soul is revived in heaven? Or is the soul exterminated and doesn't exist again? There were so many questions. And the Taoist teaching about immortality was showed people that not only were you immortal, but you could experience that immortality during your lifetime. You didn't have to die to experience immortality, and that would have been very exciting to people at those days. We don't think much about it, but in the 1700s, when all you knew was the church, the Bible, a little bit of very strange alchemy, to be told that you are immortal and you can experience it, that would have been mind-blowing, I think.
That's kind of like why I want to jump into the last book, Royal Arch. And
yes.
I'm going to move right into chapter 4. Page 94, Hiram as Christ.
Yes.
So how many signs do you believe were lost when the ritual was Christianized in 1813?
It's hard to say, but for example, Boaz and Jachin, the two pillars, they were called the strength and stability of the church in all ages. I don't know if it said the Church of England, but it said the church in all ages. Well, that's taken out of modern ritual. They don't say that. The church is not referred to. These small changes, there were many of them. But conversely, there were kind of deist things brought in the ritual when the rituals were combined in 1813. And so we see a little bit of less Christianity, a little bit more deism, I would say. Well, that's a good thing about Masonry. It makes people go back to the Bible and check things out and look up, because I think that's a very important lesson for us.
Yeah, we have to go on a journey of self-discovery.
Yes, yes.
Find out for our own. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. But
yeah, right.
You know that path is not the way, and you can tell somebody about it.
For example, the lost word, for example. What is the lost word?
And I was just going to ask you that.
We have a substitute for it, but right. What is the lost word? Well, I have an opinion what it may be, but I'm not sure because it's never been written down.
See, it makes sense to me because also in the Bible, it said Paul, and it's kind of hard to describe who he's talking to, but that Paul heard words that were not lawful to utter, but yet he still heard them. So how is that? If it's not lawful to hear, how did he hear them in the first place? Somebody with maybe authority, or you're in a certain place. Masonic instruction type deal.
Right. So some lodges teach that the lost word is tetragrammaton, but I don't think it is. I think the tetragrammaton could have been one of the lost. I mean, it's a very sacred word. I think it's what Christ uttered on the cross when he was dying. God, why have you forsaken me? And then he uses this word, which nobody understood at the time who was standing there. And so the meaning was lost on them, and that became the lost word.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, no,
that's in the same area that you were referring to.
I never thought about it like that. Because I would always assume that whatever the word is, it's something to not just enlighten, but to bring life.
Yeah, so I think the word has to have power, and it has to be a power word. And we have words like that. It also refers in the Bible that the opposite was correct. You could kill somebody with a word, and there were examples of people being killed with words. It's given in the Bible. So conversely, a word that has power, that gives you power, could be a very powerful thing to have. And if it got lost, that would be a tragedy.
Well, the first thing that comes to me was the couple after Pentecost in the Acts, where they're
Yes.
caught in a lie. I don't know if a word was said to them, but they were caught using false words.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
That. So, okay, that makes a little bit more sense now. Learn something new every day. All right.
Sorry, no bunny stories this time.
No. Well, I don't think I've got any. That's still a riot. The page 99 in the Royal Arch, 5 inconsistencies. Hiram's death and burial. What is that?
Hiram was when he died, he was burnt to ashes, and his ashes were put in an urn. The urn was buried close to King Solomon's temple. Well, if you look at Jewish law, when Jews die, they cannot be cremated. They have to be buried whole in a grave. There is no cremation for Jews. So why is this person being cremated? Well, when we go back to first book of Kings, it says, that Hiram was the son of Tyre. He came from Tyre. He was the widow's son of the tribe of Naphtali. His father was a man of Tyre. Well, Tyre's in Lebanon. So he had 2 parents, had 2 nationalities. Of course, his mother being Jewish, and Judaism is a matriarchal society. So anybody born to the mother is automatically a Jew. But as he lived in Lebanon, he identified as being Lebanese, I suppose. Anyway, so obviously I feel that he wasn't accepted as being 100% Jewish because he was cremated. There's the end of it, And that's a very kind of difficult thing. We believe him to be like Solomon, to be a Jew, but it doesn't look like he was he wasn't treated as 100% Jew. And we saw in the Scottish Rite, the companions had to be Jewish to work on the temple. They otherwise they weren't allowed, because the whole temple complex was seen as being a spiritual building, and who was not Jewish was not allowed near it, not even to collect debris. So, yeah.
Not even the structure, the architecture of it?
Yes, it all had to be made by Jews. And that's in Scottish Rite, that they had to be, everyone going to work, the 3 people that go to ask to work on the temple, they have to be examined first by the judges, whether they're Jewish or not. And then they're allowed, and the only job they got was to clear rubble. And when they're clearing rubble, then they found the vault. But they had to be Jewish. So then how come Hiram has this? So there's a kind of inconsistency here, because he used to go into the sanctum sanctorum of the temple to pray and to draw up ideas for completing the temple on his tracing board.
Right.
Well, how come he was allowed to go in there? But the second point, and I got 5 inconsistencies. The second point is
like what you just said there. I don't remember hearing anything if he was a Levite priest or.
Yeah, right. He's an artisan. He's a builder. He's not even an architect. He's just a builder. So how come he's allowed into the Holy of Holies to offer up? Of course, the Holy of Holies at that time hadn't been consecrated, I don't suppose, because the temple hadn't been completed. But the whole area was definitely sacred as they were building it. They started off with a ritual to identify the plot of land, and they would have had some ceremony, and from that point onwards that would have been spiritual So if you'd had to be Jewish to walk on it, but by having Hiram being cremated, there's a problem there.
Well, like you also bring up, the temple wasn't complete. Why would the Holy of Holies be a place to go?
Yes,
and
I mean, it just might be
still outside in the tent. It's not in a building. At this point, it's still at the tent.
But it may be just a quiet place. Everyone's building and bringing blocks and carrying very large pillars and moving sand. It might have been the only quiet place in the whole buildings. When you got a building site, it tends to be quite noisy. So you went in there for some P&Q, I think.
Yeah, that could be. That very well could be.
But then there's another point of the 5, which I thought just came to me was kind of interesting. Hiram was first attacked in the south, and then he was attacked in the west. And his guide, the deacon, says, "Okay, let's escape from the east." That's a very strange thing to say, because when you're going from the south, which is say you're standing in the west, the senior warden. The right-hand side is the south, and then you've got to go all the way around the temple to the other side of the temple to the east to escape. Why not go out the north? The north is closer.
Yeah,
that seems a very strange thing to say. But if it's in line with my Taoist example I give later in the book, then there's a reason for that.
Well, why wouldn't he just go out the north gate? Because, at least here in Illinois, there's a chair in the north, suggesting that there's an exit or there's a doorway there. Very rarely here have I seen the north just all chairs without having that dais post or.
Well, in Japan we don't have anything in the north, but when you read Leviticus, Josephus, the Antiquities of the Jews, he describes the temple. And he saw the temple. So, none of us have seen the temple. He actually saw the temple, and he said there were gates in all 4 directions.
Right.
Yeah. And not only that, there are 3 doors in each gate. It was a massive gate, and they had 3 entrances, and presumably one was just for women to get in, like they do now. The Wailing Wall, there's a fight going on in Israel that women should not be allowed near the Wailing Wall. So they set up another little piece of wall on the side where women can go. Well, imagine what it was like 1,000 years ago. So they had several doors in the north.
Yeah, there was also something else in the Antiquity of the Jews about that doorway, something about where it led, or maybe it wasn't in the Antiquity of the Jews, but that there was doorways, that there were arches to lead out in the north. So
all 4 directions, it says so. They each had the colors, and let's see, it's got the sizes of them and everything, and there were steps, and how many steps, and how high each step was, and the whole detail is there. There was definitely a gate there.
Yeah, after reading that portion of your book, I have all the writings of Josephus, and I started reading it. I'm like, yep, it's there. It's not a mistake. Yep. So there's a reason why.
Yes. Yeah, so the reason why becomes apparent when you understand Taoism. And that's the end of this book on Royal Arch. It explains this spiritual ritual that the floor plan of a lodge is representing the spiritual exercise that a Taoist person would follow for to become spiritually mature. What the Taoists call a perfected man, in Masonry is called a perfected Mason. They even use the same words.
Well, okay, since you mentioned Taoism, and I don't have to wait till later now, if anybody's interested here in the States, where should they go? Is there a website they can?
Yes, so you have to be aware that there are 2 types of Taoism. There's the Tao Jia and Tao Jiao. The difference is got an O on the end. the Dao Jia means the house of the Dao, and the Dao Jiao means the religion of Dao. The religious Taoists tend to be much more superstitious, and I believe that having an out-of-body experience or yes, astral travel is actually part of their ritual. To understand the philosophical aspect of Tao, then you would want to join the House of Tao, Tao Jia, and they focus on morality, and just exactly as the Masons do, they talk about morality, and they focus on 3 or 4 famous Chinese philosophers, Confucius, Mencius, Lao Tzu, and Zhuangzi. What I write in my book is a little bit of mixture of the two. And the reason is because in the 1700s, the Dao Jia had been revitalized after it had been closed down for 150 years. Even in China, there was a little bit of confusion between the two, and the Dao Jia was trying to establish itself in China.
Okay. Now, are they like Freemasons?
Oh, yes. So
free letter and clear letter, can you go back and forth or visit?
Yes, I'm sure that there is a Taoist temple in San Francisco. I'm fairly sure. I think I've even seen it. I don't think Taoism is very extensive in America, but you would probably want to read up on it before you made any commitment. You can join a Taoist temple. I don't think there's a charge. They ask for a donation, like I gave a donation in my case. And then you can visit other Taoist temples and join in their activities. Yeah, it's very similar to Freemasonry, but it's the same. The ritual initiation of Taoism is the same as the first degree. Exactly the same. Everything's the same.
You were saying that in the first interview. Now, when it comes to the second and third degree, it's completely different.
Yes. So the second degree is about alchemy. And so I think that at the time of 1717, the Royal Society had been already established 50 years earlier. And the Royal Society helped to organize science in England. And so they divided what they called natural philosophy, which was basically a study of everything. And they divided into things like mathematics, physics, geography, geology, and then they all set up their associations of the British Association of Geologists or whatever, or the British Association of Medicine. And that's how it started. So 50 years later, alchemy was a bit of a joke. You know, it's a kind of medieval scam, they might have thought, because nobody was successful with alchemy. But the Chinese already knew by something like 100 AD that you're not going to make gold from mercury. But what they realized, it was a spiritual transformation. And this is what Freemasons in 1717 were trying to achieve, spiritual transformation. So the first degree, the transmission of light, is to awaken the soul to it's a new reality. And the second degree shows you how to circulate the energy in your body. So in the lodge, you're making circumambulations. This is the same. This is one of the Taoist practices. And then the third degree is when you get so much energy in your body, you're able to leave the body in astral travel and go on to a higher plane, become a perfected Mason, perfected man. And this is also Taoist teaching. I see it to be, just fit so like hand and glove to me.
Okay. Now, I recently bought a Lao Tzu, the Tao Te Ching. Very interesting. I can't remember the George something, the guy that translated it. I guess it's the best translation out there. It was done in the, I want to say 60s or something like that. Yes. I found it very enlightening. I've read it twice already.
Right.
I usually wake up when I'm feeling well enough. Wake up, I have my coffee. I usually read something like that, or Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. So, and I've added that into my daily reading repertoire to help me through the day.
It's like a meditation. It's now divided into 81 chapters, but originally it was just one long story. And also there was more of it, but it's got lost in time. So we don't know, but it's, yes.
I didn't know that it was longer. I just, okay.
Yeah, it seems to finish well. And I also, the order the things are in, I think, has been changed over time. And the other point is there've got to be probably 200 translations of the Tao Te Ching, and each one tends to be different. And as I show in my book, there can be big differences in meaning. I read Chinese I did Chinese at university. To a certain extent, I can read Tao Te Ching. So when I look at the English and the Chinese, I can see big differences.
When I purchased the book, I'm like, well, obviously I want to get the best translation that I can find. And this guy's book kept popping up. Okay, I'll get it. And how they tried to explain in that book how there isn't words in the English language for some of the Chinese dialect at the time.
Yes.
So
yes.
I can see where it would just get completely mistranslated and misinterpreted.
Yeah, so a lot of people were trying to translate it as a spiritual document, and so they added their own feelings into the words.
And it mentioned that too. That's funny that you said that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it starts off, saying the way is not the way, the word is not the word. What does that mean? And then some people say the law is not the Lord, the law, or the spirit of the law is not the spirit of the law, or something like that. That's a big leap, So yes, to me, I have probably 8 or 10 different versions I used when I wrote my book. And I don't think one's any better than the other, but I do like to use it for meditation, because they're short. There's only 8 lines in some of these poems.
It's not long. The book is very thin. I mean, I guess I don't want it to read like stereo instructions. I know that's showing my age, but you don't want it to be so obscure like that. Okay. It's probably going to be hard enough for me to understand as it is. To get it straightforward.
Right. It's good to get one that has good notes attached, because a lot of things need explaining, because we're talking about something that's probably, I forget how old it's 4,000 years old, because Confucius knew about Tao Te Ching.
Yeah, that's right.
So, and Lao Tzu wrote the Tao Te Ching, but he didn't invent it. He was just writing down what he had learned from somebody else. Confucius lived in 500 BC and Mencius 300 BC. So we're talking about something that's already 2,500 years old. So probably it existed 1,000 years. It was very old anyway, whatever.
And it's probably gone through
you need notes
as it is. So
yeah, you need explanatory notes attached to the Tao Te Ching when you buy it. Yeah,
the one I have is pretty simple. I think it has some explanatory. It doesn't have much. I don't have. No. Page 102 in Royal Arch, the 3 blows. What Albert Pike saw the 3 blows as representing civilization, the blow to the Hebrews, mainly the Syrians, Chaldeans, and Romans. Why did he think it represented society? Or
well, because they were the arch enemies of the Jews at the time, and so the Syrians, the Chaldeans, and the Romans were always fighting with the Jews, and so therefore they each one represented one of the 3 blows, I suppose. That's how he saw it. Yeah.
Now, all right. Now I'm going to get to what I wanted to ask. Now, there, from probably about an hour ago. All right. The secret of the golden flower and Christ oil. Is that the same thing?
Secret of the Golden Flower and Christ oil?
Yes.
Christ oil meaning?
Now, the way it was worded in your book, how you mentioned A to Z when you're meditating,
Yes.
and that the oil or whatever it's called goes up and down through the body.
Right.
I've heard that being called Christ oil.
Okay.
From other things. So I didn't know if it was the
Right.
same thing and just different, different meanings.
I see. Yes, yes. So, so the holy oil, which is, it starts with the Egyptians, and the Egyptians used to anoint their pharaohs and kings with sacred oil. This sacred oil was taken from the fat of alligators, and alligators were sacred animals to them. And so taking the fat to make oil from an alligator, which was a sacred symbol, made this sacred oil. And so they were anointed with it. And when they were anointed, they were called the Messiah. And that's where the word Messiah means anointed one.
So that's not a Greek word. Messiah is not a Greek word.
Yes, it is. So in Christianity, it becomes, I forget the term, but Christ means that the same thing in
the anointed one,
Latin.
Okay. What's the Egyptian word for that? Do you know, or Messiah?
So it actually comes from yes, and that's actually in the last book you were talking about. It's MSSH, I think the word is mesh, which means a crocodile or alligator, and that's where the word Messiah comes from. Mesh.
Huh.
See if I have it here.
So this was all based on discovery of or alligator fat or alligator oil?
Well, it's just part of the tradition of anointing kings, and then the Egyptians have a very long history of using it. So then in Europe, it became this sacred oil was used in Greece and other countries, and even now, King Charles III, in a month's time, will be anointed with sacred oil on his forehead. He's going to have the same ceremony. And one of the issues in England has been whether this is a Catholic ceremony or not. And we say, no, it's a historic thing. It's nothing to do with Catholicism.
Well, I don't see it as being a Catholic ceremony. I mean,
yeah, but that's it. That's how they thought. So it's a little bit hard to.
You go through a 15-step process, or well, I guess the secret of the golden flower.
Yes. So yes. So this is ancient Chinese process was very complicated and it took a long time. But the actual practice of astral projection is really quite a simple one. And so I think we missed one step in our conversation about the ladder. So the ladder isn't really in the lodge. We talk about a ladder with 3 steps, with symbols for charity and faith and good hope and things like that on it. But in the old days, the ladder was a major symbol for ascension into heaven. In the book on immortality, there were many examples given of the types of ladders. Also in this Royal Arch book, we talk about the ladder quite extensively, because for people didn't understand how the world works like we do now. So people believed that angels had wings. Otherwise, how do they go from heaven to earth and back again? They'd have to have wings. But in reality, they are energetic balls of energy, energetic beings. They don't need wings. And so they just move as they wish. And so going to heaven, you don't need a ladder. But in the old days, that's what they thought. So many the references I give are about people climbing ladders. And in one of the early books, I think it was it might have been, yes, Initiation by Light. There was a reference to the Gormagons, and the Gormagons were a competitive Chinese-themed organization trying to bring down the Freemasons. And in the painting by William Hogarth, they have a ladder in the middle of the picture, and they're all sitting on a ladder on top of a donkey. That ladder was central to Masonic teachings in the old days, and I think this got taken out in 1813 when the moderns and the ancients combined, because there's very little talk of a ladder nowadays.
So with the ladder, the Secret of the Golden Flower, and astral projection, is this, yes, does this all lead to like a royal arch? And what I mean is, like, from what you show in the book, and I guess what I get, like the aura from everybody when they sit down or when they pray and everything, is this what Freemasonry is to lead to a spiritual awakening, to come outside of the body but still be present in the body and have that emit to everyone else, that aura emit to people, and that being the royal arch?
So there is a tradition of healing by hands, laying on of hands, that people with very strong energy can heal others just by putting their hands on them. And I believe this is actually true. It has happened. There's examples all around the world where people have just touched somebody and they've healed them. So in the second degree, we are raising our energy by circulating the energy, and that's what the reference to Herman and Zion and the oil that became dew, it all refers to this. So the final part is when you meet Christ, and Christ is always at the top of the ladder. People climbing this ladder, and they meet Christ at the top, and he's holding his arms out, waiting to accept them. This is what's happening in the third degree, the raising of Hiram. He's not going up a ladder. He went round the lodge, circumambulated the lodge. That represents the ladder. And now he's at the bottom of the ladder, and the strong paw of the Lion of the tribe of Judea. The Lion of the tribe of Judea is in the book of Revelation. That refers to Christ. So Christ is putting his hand out to accept Hiram into heaven, basically as a spiritual being. And the word that is given to him is that perfects him, makes him perfect. Coming up the ladder, he's a spiritual being, and now Christ gives him this word, the substitute for the lost word, and now he's a spiritual being. So in the golden flower, it's very, very similar, except the technique is very, very complicated. As you said, there's 15 steps. In some of them, there's even more steps than that. But the actual technique, as given by modern people who call themselves explorers in consciousness, people like William Bullman, Bob Peterson, it's a much simpler process than that. You just have to raise your energy. You have to make your body very quiet. Your brain has to be awake. And then you have to focus on what you want. And it's really just like a 2 or 3 step process. And there's no ladders involved. That is all part of ancient history. St. John of the Cross and the Dark Night of the Soul, he was climbing ladders, and meeting Christ at the top. But this is all medieval thinking. Nowadays, you don't have to think like that. And then people say, well, why would you want to leave your body? Well, because your spirit leaves your body. You can come back whenever it wants. Your body isn't affected. But then you can go anywhere you want, anywhere in the world. You can go anywhere in the universe. You can go to other dimensions that don't exist. We don't know they exist, but you can find you can visit people who have died, who are close to you, like your uncle, your grandfather. You can visit them, see what their life is like. now. You can find answers to so many problems or things. And secondly, you can actually help the living by visiting them and giving them energy when they're sleeping. And giving this is the laying on of hands. But now you're a spiritual being. You are infinitely more powerful than you were as a human laying on hands. That is nothing compared to what you can do as a spiritual being.
So I would like to experience that. I personally never have, or if I have, I don't recall it.
Right.
So how would you go about the process of doing or getting in the state of astral travel?
So that is the $64,000 question. And
some people seem like it's real easy. Follow my book. I've got these couple steps, and some people just, or most people, don't achieve it.
So in my case, I've had 12 experiences that I knew at that time that I was out of my body. I could either see my body, or I was in such a strange situation that I knew I wasn't in bed. So, I wish I could answer that easily, because I've also read dozens of books on the subject and have yet to find an easy way out. But my first astral travel was when I was about 8. And I, at the time, was at a boarding school in South England, which meant that I was in a dormitory, and I was with other children, about 15 children in the dormitory. And there was this craze going on, and because it's a craze, all the kids want to be involved. And what the idea was when you go to sleep, you hold your hand up in the air, one hand, one arm, just hold it up. And that was it. Well, when I did it, I had an out-of-body experience. And I popped out of my body, and I was floating in the universe. And I think I was inside a very large geometrical pattern. It just happened to be floating in space. And it was a really strange situation. And there were all these different angles and things. And I was like, and the reason for that was that the same day the headmaster had been in the dormitory, came to say goodnight to us. And he'd been explaining explaining to us about the Pythagorean theorem, which is the 47th problem of Euclid. And we were only 8, but it came up, it was in a book somebody, and he was explaining to us. And so obviously geometry was in my mind. And then I was floating in space. And then I remember coming back and going woof, straight into my bed. I felt like I'd fallen from a very high, like a mile high. In fact, obviously I hadn't fallen anywhere, but the feeling of movement, my heart was racing. I was, whoa, I was only 8. And so that was very strong. And I didn't know that was out of body. I didn't know what it was, but I'd initiated that just by holding my hand up.
Just by holding your hand up.
Yeah. So probably I was so tired, I was falling asleep, but my mind was focused on my hand. And that's what you need to do. You have to have a very tired body, but a mind that is wide awake.
Is there any, like the dreams when you feel like you're flying or you can't fly, is that coming close to the sensation?
Maybe. Yes. So this is the whole thing about consciousness. You have dreams, then we have lucid dreams, and then we have out of body. They're all different levels. They may be similar. There may be some relation between them. Some people from a dream can go into lucid dreaming, and that means they're aware that they are dreaming, and then they can actually change the dream. And from lucid dreaming, some people can activate an out-of-body experience. But normally we go just straight into out-of-body.
Like I said, I don't know if I've ever experienced it or come close, but sometimes I feel like I'm getting in this real deep sleep. And I have those jerks. What do they call them?
Yes.
Chimeric jerks or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
and I feel like just before I jerk, like I'm falling. As
Yeah.
Any part of the process?
That's a neurologic jerk. Yes, so that may be to stop you going into an out of body experience. Because sometimes when I drive on the expressway and it's nighttime and it's got this kind of orange fluorescent lighting and you're just going straight for hours, you know, I'm about to pop out my body. I can feel it. I have to hit my legs to bring my awareness back. I slap my hand very hard on my legs. That little tingle, sting, focuses my. Otherwise, I could have just come out of my body, and that could have been really bad.
Yeah. You don't want to do that.
You don't want to do that on the expressway.
Because I've always, well, not like all the time, but I do get that where I don't sleep well as it is. Sometimes I get 4 hours of sleep a night because of my condition. But I'll get that, and like I feel like, okay, I'm falling over, and then all of a sudden, okay, stop. Like I want to get into that deep sleep, but my body just won't let me.
Yes. So it's so my background is neuroscience, and this is an area, of course, I'm very interested in. There's a thing called neurotheology that looks at this. There's a Professor Professor Persinger, who's at Laurentian University in Canada, and he looks at this whole area, whether God is just built into everybody's mind, the connection to the spiritual, or whether it's not. You know, it's very interesting research.
Now, is there? Well, I guess you kind of answered. I was going to say, is there a certain prayer, or is there something easier people can read instead of just holding up their arm in the air to try and
I don't know if how that worked. I mean, I was 8 and I just remember what happened to me. It was mind blowing, put it that way. The best people to read, as I mentioned, are the 2 books that Bob Peterson and William Bullman have put out, Adventures Out of the Body, and I forget the titles. Hold on. The end of my book, I recommend them as recommended reading for everybody. So William Bullman's book is Adventures Beyond the Body, and Robert Peterson's is Out of Body Experiences. Both great books that give you lots of advice on how to do it. And of course, the first thing you have to get over is the sense of fear. Everybody's, you know, you're dealing with something that you know nothing about. There is nobody to advise you. Asking a priest or someone for advice is a really bad idea, because they know they're meant to be spiritual leaders and teachers, but they know nothing about the real spiritual world. They just know what's written in their book, you know. We're talking about a real spiritual experience. And so this is something you have to learn by yourself. It is very worthwhile. And as I mentioned earlier, the Chinese say a man is perfected when he's able to do that. He's called the perfected man. Well, in Masonry, we call him the perfect Mason. That's where the link is. I wish I knew how to do it, you know, just like that.
I was just going to say, I wish I knew how to do it too. I mean, I'm constantly trying to perfect myself, and just, you know,
but as I mentioned in the book, all around the world, some 90% of other religions believe in astral travel, and many of them are able to do it whenever they want, at will. So I think
it's
so.
Hard
Christianity,
for me to understand. It really is.
So unfortunately, Christianity has held us back in our bodies when we should be more spiritual people. And I believe I'm a spiritual being having a physical experience, and then when I die, I will have another physical experience or something. So I believe in life after death, but Christianity has held these secrets from us.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that in some places, maybe it tries to explain in its own way what those secrets are, but I think it has kept things from us. like
it's not just Christianity. All the Abrahamic faiths are the same. Muslims and Jews, the same. And none of them are aware of this. But when you go to religions outside of this Abrahamic faith, like African religions and South American religions, they not only believe in it, they say it's a fact, that you can leave your body whenever you want to. They're shamans. That's where shamanism comes from.
I do believe there's a God, but what I don't believe is half the things that are said about God, because these are all man-made, and we're trying to find something that's beyond man, but explain it through man. And I don't think we're on that level to understand it or even explain it.
Well, I think God's, was sort of invented or explained, going back thousands of years to explain things that nobody understood.
An explanation.
Why do these strange things happen? Why is there lightning? Oh, it must be God is angry. It's just simple explanation of the world that they lived in, and then God became an entity in himself or in itself, and then God became the reason that things happen because God wants it. And now it's got to a point where God is actually personified in the Old Testament. He gets angry, he punishes people, he strikes them dead, he does all sorts of things. Well, hold on a second. The whole idea of God has gone a little bit too far. God to me is just love. God is love, and if we can use love to other other fellow beings, as is written in the Bible, and as Confucius said, that you should treat your neighbor as yourself. Well, this is a very old story. It's older than the Bible. Confucius was writing about it hundreds of years before the Bible was written. So love your neighbor as yourself. Treat your neighbor as yourself. So to me, that's the essence of God.
And it should be. We tend to grow more when we're loved, when we show love, instead of being anger. And I know I'm very bad with anger and stuff like that, but I do notice a difference, and as stubborn-headed as I could be, you stay angry, but you don't feel anything good from it.
Well, yes, anger affects you rather than the other person. So, if you get angry at somebody, you're the one that's getting upset and irritated. The best thing to do in this situation is just walk away. If you have an issue, sorry, I can't help you. You have an issue. I can't help you.
Right, and you're showing love there by not, trying to bring out more aggravation in that person. And I get it. I mean, it's taken me a while to somewhat figure it out, and I still don't have it completely figured out with anger, but it definitely makes you grow as a person to be more loving and caring than
right.
So it makes perfect sense to me.
Well, so again, I'm interested in theology only so far as what I can learn from it. I think most of the stories in the Bible are meant as parables or to explain something.
I think it's to explain morality in the only way they could at the time.
Yes, that's right. Yes. There's many things they couldn't explain, so they made a story about it. So yes, that was a major issue.
Right. There might be some truths to the story, and we learn things from fiction all the time. People are moved by the books they've read throughout time that have nothing to do with history.
Right.
All right, we'll go into
okay. Yes.
Well, well, I guess I should just probably say this. Your books are excellent. Once again, I recommend them to everybody whenever I get a chance. I have found so much knowledge in these books, and I know you said you might be making a fifth one. I don't know if you can actually make it as long as the rest of these, but if you are, I can't wait to read it. I've been so blown away and fascinated by your books.
Well, I'm kind of simple person. I ask the questions that are so obvious, but nobody asks. You know, like the Hiram escaping from the North Gate. I mean, such a simple question. Nobody asks it. And then even if they ask it, they don't know how to find the answer. So, and that's what's interesting to me, is to research all these things. And so I found about the Tarot of the Revelation. There's always something that starts me on my journey, and it's a fairly well-known tarot reader visited Tokyo, and my friend said, "You've got to meet him." I wasn't really interested in the esoteric. I didn't know anything about tarot. I didn't really believe it until I met this person. This person was unbelievably good tarot reader, and I paid for 1 hour, but we were there an hour and a half talking, and he knew me inside out. I hadn't told him anything. He knew all about my parents just by looking at some cards. Where'd he get this from? And obviously he had some sort of link to the supernatural. And from then I started studying the tarot. And at the time I had been studying also Edgar Cayce, and I was lucky enough to put the two together, because Edgar Cayce talks about the Book of Revelation, and I realized the tarot cards, nearly half of them can be found in the Book of Revelation in the same order as they are in a tarot deck. And that blew my mind.
Yeah, okay. I know, let me start here. There's a couple different tarot decks. Now, for your book, which one did you use to retranslate it, or which one did you use for Edgar Cayce's translation?
Well, when I wrote the book, I hadn't designed my own cards. I now have the Tarot Revelation cards, which have been, they've been corrected.
About the ones not the ones that you just made, but the ones that you used to get.
Right. So in that time, there are two main streams of tarot cards. So there are thousands of different. There are even Mickey Mouse and Kitty Chan and lots of other really nonsensical cards that have no meaning. But the two major, one is called the Marseille. Base is a French card. I think it was drawn something like the 1415, and the second one is the Rider-Waite cards. Sorry, yes.
Rider-Waite, okay.
Rider-Waite. So the Rider-Waite was, Marseille was, as I said, designed around the 1450s. The Rider-Waite one came into existence about the 1920s or something like that. The difference is that the Marseille card have major arcana and minor arcana. The major arcana are 21 cards showing little pictures of an event. The minor arcanas are similar to playing cards. They have numbers 1 to 10, and there are 4 of them, and normally they would be something like a rod or a baton, and a sword, a plate, which can also be a coin, and a cup or something like that. And these represent the 4 elements of air, water, earth, and fire. But in the Marseille one, they're just pips, little dots, little symbols. Whereas in the Rider-Waite cards, each card has a picture in it. Now the picture, a couple of them are a little bit misleading, and therefore it means you don't really understand the card. The minor arcana actually are all a little story in their own right. So the major arcana, of course, is a story. It's the Fool's Journey, it's often called. But the minor arcana also tell 4 little stories. And if you don't understand each card, then the story gets confused. 2 of the stories end well, 2 of the stories end badly. And so you have to kind of understand these stories when you're giving a reading. And so I started looking at the relationship between tarot cards and the Book of Revelation. And because I was able to find 14 of the cards out of 21 were not only in the same order, but the same cards, virtually the same cards. So then you have to say, well, why were pictures? Why was the Tower of Revelation translated into cards? And the answer is because in the medieval time nobody could read, and they wanted to tell the story of the Book of Revelation as pictures to show people. You see a picture, you remember it. If you can't read and write, you know, then they wouldn't understand the story. And that's where the tarot cards come in.
How did tarot cards become the fortune telling cards to predict the future or to tell one what to expect in their life?
They're not actually the penultimate thing. There are many ways of doing fortune telling. Cards, of course, one. Another one is regular playing cards with hearts and diamonds, and they're exactly the same story, except for people don't recognize that the playing card is based on the tarot cards, which came first. So you can use playing cards if you're on an airplane and they give complimentary cards away, which some airlines still do. You can do a reading there and then. Other people use sticks, twigs. The Chinese use sticks, pieces of bamboo and things like that. Other people use knuckle bones. In the old days, really old days, we're talking thousands of years old, the Chinese would get the shell of a dead turtle and they would write their question on the turtle, and then they would heat it up in a fire, and then cracks would appear in the turtle's shell, and where these cracks were was a way of reading the answer, you know. So basically it comes down to what is fortune telling. And I don't like the word fortune telling. I prefer divination, because tarot cards connect us to the divine, divination. So we're actually accessing information from the universe and then telling it to our friends, to our client, or we call them the querent, the searcher. So one of the first things you'll find about tarot reading is if your ego gets in the way and you start interpreting and saying, this is what I think, this is what I think, then the reading will not be as good as it could have been if you just let the universe talk through you to the querent. Okay. That's why it's divination.
Yeah, I get what you're saying as being a, I guess, former LDS elder, priesthood holder. That's kind of how it was. You let the blessing flow through you. You don't, it's not really taught exactly how to do it, but my interpretation was let it flow through you. Don't force anything. Just let it come natural. So that makes sense to me.
So, and in fact, anybody can do it. And one of the easiest way is automatic writing. And I've had some really interesting so-called conversations just through automatic writing. And what you do is you get a big pad of paper and a pen, and you just go quiet, and then you just write down whatever you think, anything. And first of all, the first page is complete nonsense. You get words like cat, and then you get, water bill, and then the tax man, and, it just comes like a stream of consciousness. But on the second page, you start getting sentences. And then by the third page, you're getting whole sentences that make sense. It's just a fantastic thing. And anybody can do that. And somebody did, Neil Walsh wrote a book called Conversations with God. That's what he did, Neil Walsh. And his book is now, how many volumes has he written? I've got at least three books from Neil Walsh. And yes, that's what he did. He just automatic writing. But don't tell your priest, because he'll say this is the work of the devil.
Work of the devil, yes. Anything we don't understand is always the
Exactly.
work of the devil.
Yep.
So, how important was Edgar Casey's teachings to interpret the translation of the Book of Revelation for the tarot?
Yeah. To me, it was an awakening, because first of all, the first spiritual experience I had was this German guy. He actually lives in San Francisco, but he gave this reading for me, and then I wanted to read all sorts of stuff. I was trying to find a teacher in Tokyo, and I didn't. And then one day I walked into an English bar in Tokyo called the Rising Sun, and they had a kind of lend and give library. You know, any book you don't want, just leave it there. And one book was on Edgar Casey, and I picked it, and I've been hooked ever since.
When I first learned of Edgar Casey years ago, very fascinating.
Yeah.
As far as I know, the only thing that he ever got wrong, or supposedly got wrong, is the position or where Atlantis was. Other than that, he was spot on for everything. He did medicines, healing, and he would do it for people all the way on the other side of the world, and do it on his couch.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So, you know, he was sometimes writing to people or on the telephone with people, and he said, you know, the medicine for your disease you'll find in this chemist shop. And the person went to the chemist shop and said, well, they don't have it. He says, yes, they do. Tell him to look at the third shelf in the back room, and there it was. You know, this is a person who's thousands of miles away from the person he's talking to. This alone should tell you that, you know, the world is very exciting. He was able to talk Italian sometimes. He'd never been to Italy. He started talking Italian.
Yes, there were just so many things that are coming back to me that I forgot I heard about it. It's mind blowing.
Yeah.
People that he could do this, but even more so that he said anybody can do this.
Exactly.
As far as I know, I don't know if he tried to teach anybody, but he said anybody was able to do it.
That's the real problem, because what he was doing was astral travel. He was leaving his body and visiting something he called the Akashic Records, and then accessing a book about you or the situation. Just open the book, read it, and then tell people. You know, so this information, I don't think it's really out in the world as a book, but the universe is a very fascinating place, and information, for us to be able to access it, we would expect to have a book. So this is what we get.
One other thing here. You mentioned about Pope Joan, card number 2 or 3, I think you said.
Yes.
Pope Joan. Yeah. Can you explain that card?
Well, Pope Joan is the Pope that the Vatican refuses to recognize. She was actually, I think she was actually a man. She dressed as a man, so she acted as a man so that she would be able to work in the clergy, and obviously her family had money, and she was elected as a pope. Vatican at the time would not allow women to be popes, and so this is one of the popes that is denied by Christianity but is recognized by the Hermetic teachings in the tarot.
It's a very interesting subject. One of the cats did something. Sorry about that. Okay. You hinted John the Baptist being the author of the Book of Revelations, according to evidence given by the Gnostics. How is it possible when tradition states that John the Baptist was beheaded during Jesus's lifetime?
So that's the question, isn't it? So I think the Gospels and many of the books in the Bible were not written by the people whose name's on it. You know, these were dedications. It's dedicated to Mark, or Luke, who was a doctor, so Dr. Luke, dedicated to him, and it became the Gospel of Luke. But so, it's just a collection of stories. And as if you look in the concordance of the Masonic Bible, you will see where they put the four Gospels side by side. They're not the same stories.
No, they're not.
Yeah. And a bit's missing, which is kind of really important, like the ascension of Christ is not in. So, well, hold on a second. This is...
Yeah, it's not in Mark.
Yeah.
It's not
so it makes me question, who wrote this? And God didn't write it, so... People say this is the word of God. Yeah, sorry, it's not the word of God. It's the word of man translated. Right. And a lot of them are prophets. So they're not much different from tarot card readers, who, in the old days, could have been called prophets. Who knows?
Yeah, a form of prophecy. I mean, how is that any different than?
Yeah.
Using, like you said, a turtle shell.
So the old days, the prophets were accessing the divine to give God's instruction. Well, he wasn't using cards, but he might have used something else. Or he may have been eating something like ergot or some unusual psychedelic plants. Of course, there are lots of them in the Middle East. He might have been eating that, and then he had hallucinations or spiritually inspired. Well, it's not much different from a tarot reader. I mean, if it's a good tarot card reader, not just, a good one, yes.
St. Augustine seems to have pulled the fast one on the Catholic Church when it comes to the interpretation of the Book of Revelation. What led you to believe that this was the case?
Yes, so he was at the Council of Nicaea when they decided which books were to be in the book in the Bible, and he said that the Book of Revelation should be part of the Bible. Well, structurally, that's very interesting, because the beginning of the Bible, Genesis, is reflected in the Book of Revelation at the end, but in reverse. So in book of the Garden of Eden, the gate is opened and it's closed in the Book of Revelation. And so there's a whole structures, the structures are very similar. So for that reason, also, I believe the Tarot of Revelation is a very Gnostic book. Augustine first was a Manichaean before he became Christian. And so he took the teachings of Mani, and who was Gnostic, and then he became Christian. But it doesn't mean to say he hadn't forgotten his teaching and his belief. So it's another reason he wanted to promote the Book of Revelation to be in the Bible.
Was it always just seen as Gnostic before it was actually put into the Bible?
I think probably Gnostic is a modern interpretation of it. Gnostic just means knowledge of God. And so instead of praying with the leadership or at the direction of a priest, with Gnosis, you don't need that leadership or direction. You talk to God directly. And I think that's what the Tarot of the Revelation is about. John is by himself, he's meditating, and suddenly an angel appears in front of him and tells him, this is the future of the world. This is the end of times. Well, the Tarot of the Revelation was written about 100 AD. Well, it wasn't the end of times, but it wasn't, the angel wasn't explaining history. He was explaining how John could to change his energy, exactly the same as the Chinese do. And he was saying you could move your energy like the letters to the 7 churches. Each one has a spiritual awakening in it, and then you can become a perfected being.
Yeah, page 62. Hip hip hooray. What is the actual behind that?
No, hip hip hooray is, well, hip is we write it as HIP, but originally it was HEP, 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 and it stands for the words Jerusalem est perdita, HEP, and it means Jerusalem has fallen, and that's Latin for Jerusalem has fallen. So the knights were going through Europe trying to get more knights to come with them on one of the crusades to take Jerusalem back from the infidel, meaning Muslims. So Jerusalem could be Christian again, and they would go around saying hip hip hooray, and hooray is an abbreviation of huzzah, which is a Latin, I think it's a Latin word, meaning to raise the flag. So Jerusalem has fallen, Jerusalem's fallen, raise the flag, follow us on our crusades to take it back again. And that's hip hip hooray.
Wow. Never would have known that. I mean, it just,
yep.
I've seen it throughout movies since I was a kid. And how many times have they done it in, throughout the world? And
but like it's always in a celebratory. It's always a celebration. Yes, it's not negative. When you're happy, a birthday party, hip hooray, etc. Or you win a prize. Hip hip hooray. It's to raise that energy, get everyone together. Now let's go to Jerusalem and kick some butt.
Yeah, I never would have guessed Jerusalem had anything to do with.
Because Jerusalem is spelled with an H, not a J. So see, when I was a little child, I studied Latin, and so these things kind of pop out to me.
Do you think the Church of Rome decided to eliminate the Cathars Gnostics because they wanted to have sole control over the teachings of Jesus, or did they just want control of the teachings that the Cathars had?
I think they wanted to control opposition. They just didn't want another so-called religion. As far as they're concerned, Christianity was the religion. That was it. So, any opposition, just wipe it out, unfortunately.
Yeah, just wipe out the competition. Might as well. Do you think they were more afraid of what they were teaching about Christ, or that they're just teaching Christ in general?
No, I think the Cathars and Bogomils had much more of a Gnostic approach to Christianity than the Church of Rome had become very political. It had its own armies. At one time, it was the Great Schism. They had a pope in France, and they had a pope in Rome, and then they had issues with Constantinople. So it became very political, and so perhaps piousness took second stage to raising armies, raising money, things like that.
Yeah. Most people don't know that there was 2 popes at one time. That was a thing for some time. And
I've got a ruler here written in French. It's got all 7 popes, the French popes on it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Clement V, John 12th. I can't see Clement, Innocent, Urbain, and Gregory.
History is strange. You think fiction is strange, but
yeah, but they see that the Vatican was a princedom, and it was a power unto itself. It was a country, and so it
still is. They still have their own laws in the Vatican City.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they have their own stamps. You can get Vatican stamps.
Yeah. People are amazing. People drive me nuts sometimes, but we are fascinating.
You're teaching us
so fascinating.
You're teaching us the power of love, and treat your neighbor as yourself, or as how you would want to be treated. But reality is different. You go invading countries and bringing the flag and the cross together.
Yeah, it sounds all good until somebody cuts you off in traffic.
Yeah, yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, they go postal.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Can you give me a short breakdown of the reasons why you have the speculation that John the Baptist is the author of the Book of Revelation?
Well, one of the things that is in the book is that it shows that how people can achieve a resurrection during one's lifetime. And that is a very Gnostic teaching. We also get it in the Gnostic Gospel of Thomas, talks about resurrection in one's lifetime. To me, that sounds like astral travel, because resurrection, you're being lifted out in one's lifetime. You don't die. You could just come back. So you are raised. You are come to another level. It was a Gnostic teaching. And that may be because that's why I thought that John the Baptist had been, because John the Baptist is very different from John the Evangelist. And the evangelist was a fisherman at Lake Gethsemane, and he probably didn't have an education, but John the Baptist was the son of a influential rabbi. He would have had an education.
Yeah, he was a Levite priest. His father was a Levite priest.
Yeah, yeah. So the two Johns are very different, and I think also in Masonry, the early days they tried to point that out, that operative Masons were called St. John's lodges, but these were John the Evangelist, whereas the speculative Freemasons, the patron saint was St. John the Baptist, and that was a major point for them in those days.
Interesting. I've never heard anybody have that theory before, the idea that John the Baptist is the author of the Book of Revelation. Reading your book is the first time I've heard of it. I'm sure other people have, but it's just never come across my way.
Right. Where did I put it? Apocalypse. Resurrection during one's lifetime was important. The second thing, what was it? So John Herod had tried to kill the young, but John had escaped to Patmos Island in Greece, which is quite seems an obvious place to go, and there seemed to be a Christian community there on Patmos Island, even though it was Greek at the time. And this way he escaped being executed. Yes, so it seems that John's birth was also spiritually important, because his mother, Elizabeth, had a spiritual experience when he was born. What's it said? It says his mother was filled with the Holy Ghost and spake with a loud voice in Luke 1:41.
Yeah, she also felt John leap in her womb or something like that.
Yes, yes. So I just think the timeline fits for him to have written the book, and I believe he was more Gnostic Christian. And I believe a lot of Christians were Gnostic in those days.
And when you say Gnostic, when it comes to Christianity, the metaphysical Jesus, not that he was born and is God, but that
he's teaching a spiritual lesson. For example, for his ascension and reincarnation. That's a spiritual thing. It just doesn't happen every day. People just disappearing out of caves and then coming back.
Yeah.
And so this, and the miracles that he showed people, he was showing people that there was more to life, that we were spiritual beings. And that's how I think the Gnostics also saw, because in those days it wasn't Christianity, it was just a sect of Judaism. that Christ was leading. There wasn't Christianity until 325 AD. So he was just a sect of Judaism, which taught a more spiritual type of lesson, I believe.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yes.
You mentioned chakras and recharging chakras, and
Yes.
previously you also mentioned grounding.
Yes.
I don't know how many people are familiar with that. I know I am. I've talked to like my medical doctor about grounding. He had no idea what I was talking about. He
Right.
he thought I was crazy. But with grounding and chakras, how does that relate to the Tarot of Revelation?
Yes. So first, grounding is important because in modern life, we tend to wear shoes that have plastic soles or some sort of plastic sole. In olden times, they wore leather. And the difference is that the plastic insulates you from earth. And so you're all the time receiving positive energy, and you can become overloaded with positive energy. There's no way to discharge it. So if you wore leather shoes, or even better, walked barefoot, then you're able to discharge the positive energy into earth, which is a negative, and it'll absorb that. And that's why people, when they go to the beach in the summer, they're always barefoot. They're getting a lot of positive ionization from the waves that crash on the ground. They're getting positive ionization, and then they're able to release it into the earth. So it becomes like a cycle. But if you don't release the energy, then you're going to have a lot of problems. You can be physical problems, or problems, as you say, with sleeping or thinking, or many things. And so that's the first thing. The second is to do with the chakras, is moving energy. Well, again, it just goes back to what the Taoists were talking about, moving energy through the body and raising energy. You raise your energy, but you're raising spiritual energy. It's not negative and positive, which is a kind of electromagnetic energy. You're talking about spiritual energy. So Edgar Cayce talked about how to raise energy. Again, it's the same as the Taoists in Freemasonry. It's the same story.
Same story, just different interpretation.
Yep. So apart from my other interests, I'm also a dowser. Are you familiar with dowsing?
Yes.
Yes. So I use a pendulum, and it's part of my spiritual or process, or spiritual, and so I do automatic writing, but I also do dowsing. And Raymond Grace, there's no D on Raymond, it's Raymond Grace. He's a very influential dowser, and he does fantastic work with a pendulum. And what is he doing? He's basically talking to the universe and asking the universe to help him with problems. And one of the problems we have is negativity.
Well, when I first learned about grounding and all that, okay, well, I bought some leather shoes. I wear Chelsea's. The ones I have a rubber bottom on them. I cannot wear just the leather sole because I slip everywhere, and I need, because I walk with a cane. So I'm like, all right, this is not working for me. So I figure something else out. And then I seen, and it makes sense, just get a copper strip of tape or aluminum, put your feet on there, take a couple pieces of copper wire, gator clip it to the tape, send it out the window, and just put it in.
That's it.
And that's it. That's all you have to do.
Yeah. I have a grounding sheet in front of my sofa when I'm watching television. Take my socks off and ground myself.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I know I should do it more, because it feels good to put your feet in the grass. And it feels different. I'm not saying, oh, I got, this major power, but you do feel a difference.
Well, this is subtle energy. So there's energy of different levels, and the subtle energy is what nobody tells us, but you have to discover for yourself. Negative energy, positive energy, the ability for the human mind to create magic, basically, and to change energy. And for example, in the Bible, I think something like 85% of the miracles that Jesus performed were exorcisms. So, a woman was full of spirits. He took the spirits out, put them in some pigs, and then the pigs went over the cliff. How he got rid of them. Yeah. Well, there's a better way to do it now. We don't do that. And so exorcism, again, is just the mind working with the universe to achieve something. We live in a very exciting world. I call it a wonderful world because it's a world full of wonder.
It is definitely a world full of wonder. I tend to fall on the aggravation side, but when I hear things like this, it's so fascinating. Like, why have we forgotten this? Why have we put it to the side for other things that?
Well, I think we're being controlled. People want power, so they use the power to control us with rules. Those rules include dogma in churches, and the people could be executed, in the old days if they didn't understand, for example, transubstantiation. Well, nobody could read or write. No wonder they didn't understand what they're talking about, transubstantiation. But if you said, do you believe in transubstantiation? And the guy said no, you would be executed. Well, come on, give the guy a chance.
Yeah. Because if nobody's going to read it and nobody explains it, how are you supposed to know what it is?
Yeah, but of course, nobody understood theology anyway. It was all magic to them. A lot of, in the early days in England, people thought that Catholicism was magic because you were eating the body and drinking the blood of a dead person. And the Eucharist was a little bit misunderstood. Let's put it that way. We've kind of talked through these 3 books.
We've
3.5 hours.
Just like I said, I had a bunch of other questions, but
I think they're all connected. You see, I just see a connection.
They are. I mean, the only other thing I was going to pretty much ask is if somebody wants to get your cards, how do they do it? Do you have them available?
I have some cards, yes. The cards went out of print. I printed them privately, and so I only have like a dozen sets left. The problem has been that because of COVID, the price of postage went through the roof. The cards are about $25, but it cost me $40 to send it. And that's not EMS or anything. That's just regular airmail, which normally takes a week, 10 days. So Amazon can keep their prices down because they actually own the planes that fly.
Right, yeah.
But no, the postage in Japan and England, I don't know about America, but if I could find a way around the postage, what I would like to do is print on demand for the cards, because the cards kind of, when you've read this book, the first thing is you want to try practicing. Of course you do.
Yeah, I wanted to see them. I meant to get one of the tarot decks just to have it. I like I said, I have never really been into tarots. The few readings that I have just been vague and like very obvious. I'm like, come on, I've never been blown away by it. I mean, bless those that have. I just haven't. I take it with a grain of salt. Like, all right, you're gonna come into money. Well, yeah, like no kidding. I get check all the
salary.
Come on. You got to give me a little bit something more than that. But I've never had anybody even suggest that tarot was based off of the Book of Revelation.
So there is a concept which is kind of gaining ground nowadays, and I think I just referred to it slightly in my book, and of course I'm not going to be able to find it. that the human mind is actually outside the body. We don't actually have memory in our mind. Our mind.
It must have been your book, because yes, I was
Yeah.
telling somebody that, and I did read that. I couldn't remember
Yeah.
if it was your book or somebody else's. All right.
So the brain acts as an antenna, and it receives subtle vibrations, and it interprets these vibrations into images and sounds and memories and things like that. So that would explain how tarot works. They're just tapping into somebody else's memories.
Yeah.
And automatic writing. Automatic writing is the same. Where's it all coming from? Well, it's got to come from somewhere. So imagine in the 1700s, when they took the time from church bells. So somebody comes along and says, I can prove immortality to you. I mean, wouldn't they be blown away? They were talking about it in Parliament. The church was talking about it, people writing books about it, and some people saying, oh, the soul doesn't exist, soul does exist. On gravestones, people put rest in peace on, RIP. That is part of this conversation from those times when people didn't know what happened to the soul. Some people thought the soul went to sleep until the second coming of Christ. Therefore, you're going to sleep, rest in peace. Nobody knows now. Nobody knows why they say RIP. They're not resting. When you die, you're just like you are now. You're not sleeping. You're going to be awake. You're going to have things to do. You'll be studying, meeting people. Nothing changes. Nothing changes. It's like walking into another room. That's how's it been explained?
Leaving this life or coming?
Yeah.
Okay.
Leaving this life and going to heaven. It's like walking into another room.
Yeah, I mean, we'll all find out eventually, but
yeah, of course. But isn't that the greatest thing? So at the end of the book, I refer to, I know the title of his book, the book is called 30 Years Among the Dead. He says, if you go on a holiday, the first thing you do is find out where you're going. Find out the name of the hotel, what all the interesting sites are. Well, when you die, you're going on a fantastic holiday. Don't you want to know where you're going?
Yeah.
Yeah. His name's Carl Wickman. He's a what's another psychiatrist? Yeah, psychiatrist, I think. Yes, Carl Wickman. 30 Years Among the Dead. Fantastic book. Really interesting.
And it's in this one. It's in here.
No, it was referred to at the end of Royal Arch. No, anyway, I like his book very much.
Yeah, because I usually in the page, if there's a book anybody references when I'm reading, I just write book, so I know where to find it, and I just.
Right. Yes. Yeah, I didn't do it. I refer to a lot of books in my, because my ideas about Freemasonry and connection to Taoism are a little bit far out, so I try and give the references so people can look it up themselves.
Right. Yes. I am very grateful for the references. I've read, well, one Masonic book in particular, the Hiram Key.
Oh, yes.
I did not care for that because to me there was a lot of claims, but there were no references.
Right.
I'm like, it sounded good, but without the footnotes and seeing where they got it, I'm just like, it's an unsubstantiated claim to me. I could do that all day. I want, and but just because you find a mummy with their skull broken in doesn't mean that it was I don't know, Judas or something. So that's
yeah. I feel I'm kind of stitching together other people's ideas and making a logical story out of it, rather than just sitting down and thinking something up. I'm trying to put it together rationally.
Well, Freemasonry does seem like a puzzle.
I believe it is a puzzle. I believe it was written as a puzzle. Yeah.
I mean, we're making these guys go through this. Why shouldn't it be a life-changing experience? And not just the life-changing, like, oh, I just feel something.
Yeah.
know that there's something wrong, and you just got to search it out and find it.
Yeah. So I think that the key to it is that Pythagoras didn't shout Eureka.
Right.
It was Archimedes. But in those days, everybody would have known that. Thank you.
I don't know if you could see this.
Yes, Eureka Man.
I'm like, I had to pick it up.
But it wasn't Pythagoras. So, but in those days, everybody had a classical education. They would have known that. Nowadays, we don't, so we don't see the reference. We're thinking, oh, so what?
Uh-huh. Oh, well, all right.
Yeah.
Eureka, great. Yeah, Eureka.
Yeah.
All right. So he said he discovered something I don't understand. Big whoop. Yeah. Yeah.
But that's the key that opens the whole thing. When you start looking into the background of that, then you start thinking, well, why did he sacrifice a hecatomb of cattle? Because he was a vegetarian. He wouldn't sacrifice cattle.
Right. Yeah.
He wouldn't even have cattle.
And if you know how he died, people were chasing him, and he wouldn't go into the beanstalk area. Very fascinating. Stranger than fiction, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, it's been great. Thank you for talking to me these many hours. I've enjoyed my time speaking with you and reviewing the book.
It's been fun.
Something I've looked forward to since the last time I spoke to you. So,
sorry, there were no bunny stories. But,
oh no,
lots of other things.
we got a lot of other things, so it worked out very well. Well, Brother Earnshaw, thank you again for coming on. I greatly appreciate it. I know the fans are greatly appreciate it, and I can't wait to get that information from you and continue reading your books.
Yep. Let's stay in touch.
Oh, definitely will. Sure, I know I've got questions because I did not ask half of what I had. I knew I wasn't going to get to them all, but I had to write them down anyways.
That's okay. No problem. Next time.
Yeah, will do. Well, thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Take care.
Take care. You too.
Bye.